important engagements there. One as General Secretary of the party, and then as Vice President. So I met the business community in New Amsterdam, but businessmen from right across Region 6. And I laid out the vision of the government in the short and how we intend to pursue that vision in the short term and in the long term. I spoke to them about all the challenges that we have confronted since we resumed office and how we have addressed those challenges through a series of projects and policies and programs, and the successes that we have had. And they are clear about the future, what to expect from us policy-wise, and the kind of commitment that we bring to those policies. So all of the issues that you hear that have had repeated scrutiny at the national level, issues that you've heard about, that almost seem to be incessantly scrutinized and debated, and then we start all over in a never-ending cycle, like the gas-to-energy project and the hospitals we're building, and whether we should pursue infrastructure versus sharing out all of the oil money, or what we should do with oil money, and what we should do about fighting crime, issues of corruption. All of these matters were dealt with extensively. And we did it in an environment with sensible people. Sensible people, because often you have to do this at a national level in an environment where on a weekly basis or a daily basis you see major distortion. It's as though people can't assimilate the explanations you give, as logical as they may seem. They can't assimilate them, so they go and repeat the old discredited arguments once again. We see it in the kite shore news in a very dominant way, and in Stabroek, which I'll come to later, in a less dominant but in a very targeted way, particularly by people, the guest editors of that newspaper, who I suspect are all APNU sympathizers. So you see it not, the regular reporting in the newspaper is very balanced and often gives, the stories are well done, but the editorials are horrendous. Horrendous not only for their partisan nature, but for their lack of technical sense. And so I'll come to that in a minute. So it was a good engagement, and we dealt with all of the questions. And we intend to do this right across the country. Yesterday, the President and I met with a group of young professionals doing the same thing, because we believe that these people cannot use the filter of the newspapers anymore and some television stations, that they are intent on distorting information before it gets to people. And so we have to remove that interface and go directly to the people to answer questions, interest groups. And the more we do this, the more discredited, like the Kaichor News and the others, will become, because when people hear an explanation from you and they see how it gets distorted in the newspapers, they'd lose credibility, and hopefully over time people will not even subscribe to those jaundiced, biased sources of information. The other activity that in Berbice over this weekend was the youth conference organized by the PYO. It was the largest of all of the other camps and youth conferences that we've had so far around the country. If you recall, in Region 1, we had about 1,000 young people, and nearly 700 in Region 9. In Madia, a couple of hundred, because small community. East Bank, nearly 800. East Coast, about 800. Region 5, over 2,000. And the one in Region 6 was about 3,300 persons registered. It was a massive gathering of young people, and it gave me an opportunity to talk about our history. What was interesting is something that I've said to you before. It's how most of those young people grew up under the PPP. They don't understand the 28 years that APNU had this country, the way they managed it. And by the time they left, we were poorer than Haiti, according to Alistair McIntyre, who was a former Secretary General of CARICOM. He did a report in the 90s to say we were as poor as Haiti. So many of them don't know about that period. So I asked the gathering of 3,300 persons, how many of you know, the standard question, whether that to eat bread made from wheat in the past, you could go to jail in Guyana? And one person, one young person knew this. It means that we don't know our own history and how far we have come. One person there. So the PNC and APNU, they get away scot-free because people don't remember that past. It's a little distant. And they don't know about the seriously rigged elections to keep them in power in the 28 years. They think it's a recent phenomenon, the 2020 phenomenon, but it's imprinted in the DNA. Bad policy making is part of their DNA. Not fulfilling their promises from Burnham days is either you get more wages in a public service or the hydropower. They never built the hydropower. Feed, clothe, and house the nation was their slogan. They never fed, clothed, or housed the nation. In fact, in all three of these metrics, we retrogressed as a nation. We went backwards. And that was their big slogan in the past. And so the people, they get away with murder now because people don't know of that historic period because they never lived in it. A lot of young people grew up under the PPP, so they think what we have today was always there. It wasn't there. It was a bleak environment in Guyana when we took over. Nothing, practically zero. And guess who were central figures? Jordan was in the Ministry of Finance at that time. Norton was in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in that time. The same historic figures are from the past are still today making comments. You know, it's not like they've even changed the guard from that period, from the bad old days. So it was interesting, and I think, and that's what I'm saying to people, the young people particularly, we're not going to go heavily ideological in bringing people to us, young people. We want them to come to us with a sense of our history, all of it, our political and economic history, the struggles that we have had as a country to gain independence and now to get where we are today. I want them to understand the history of the PPP from their own reading, not from what they are told about the PPP. And you will see that the PPP has always stood on the side of freedom and bringing people together across race and religion throughout our history, even in the darkest days and the worst times when we're in opposition. And then I want to bring to the young people this sense of what we stand for. We stand for sustainability, and we stand for ambition, pushing people to accomplish their dreams. We don't preach to our young people they're victims. We say to them, you can change the world, you can change Guyana. And we want to empower them to do so, giving them leadership positions in the process, as you have seen with us in the past, from the very early days in the cabinet, my own experience, 20s in the cabinet, 30 in my 30s, president, etc., President Ali. So that is what we're bringing to young people, preparing them for the future. And I think that resonates with them. That's why we're seeing so many young people. We had over 800 young people from New Amsterdam at the PYU activity. This is an APNU stronghold. If you look at the diversity of the young people at the youth conferences, you would see young kids of every race and people of every religion, kids. And that's what the future of this party looks like. That's the future of this party. As we said before, no other party has come close to replicating what we are doing. And I see people contrasting the image. Like, as I said before, last week again, and I can't repeat this enough. You look at the gathering, the few people in a tiny room that AFC had in New York, and you see it's a couple of their personal friends in that room. The people that the AFC took to the meeting are more than the audience, and then the 80% of them are at the age where, you know, they're already pensioners. No, nothing for young people there. I look at APNU's protests outside the parliament, replicate itself. The same thing. If you look at the party itself, it had nothing for young people. They're moribund, dying organizations, and they thrive on lies and rumors. And they're only kept alive by jaundiced media like the Kite Show and some others that magnify what they are not. Try to even help them politically. Like I see two massive stories in to just illustrate that point. Two massive stories in the Stabroek News from last week. We didn't get coverage for the most. You could build a highway like the Heroes Highway, and you will get a small article which would solve the problem for thousands of people every day, and get a small article. PPP insensitive to high cost of living, PNCR, massive. It amplifies what they are not. They have not dealt with the cost of living issue that we have dealt with so far. I've pointed out of the 6 major drivers of cost of living, that the 5 that the government had a role in, that is transport, electricity, water, internet, and mortgages, that's payment for housing, that the figures have been kept constant from 2020 and even lower than 2020. The one component of cost of living, which is food prices, that one is fluctuating. And we have gone through supply responses by removing taxes and a whole range of stuff, hoping to attenuate that. But it's fluctuating. They haven't dealt with that at all. But they say, we're insensitive to it. We're PPP. If we were insensitive to it, we wouldn't have done what we have done, and which even the developed world has not done. The developed world has not done. And they would never done that because they don't have imagination, apart from just the capability to tackle these complex tasks. They don't have imagination. As Jordan has demonstrated over and over again when he tried to put the VAT on education and healthcare and water and electricity and hinterland travel and all of that. So they have no imagination. So they got a great, that's why I'm saying, they're moribund, the AFC and APNU. They're dying forces. They have they're racist organizations. They don't have young people involved. They're poor on policy making, and they're just kept alive by big stories in these papers. Look another one. The same Starbuck News. PNC magnifies again. PNCR promises 400,000 income tax threshold if elected next year. This is such a clownish sort of promise. Clownish. We've seen this before in 2015. All of the promises to everybody and nothing was delivered. It's such a clownish promise, but it makes a big headline. They haven't even thought about this. I suspect they saw the president's speech, which they did. They had nothing to say, so they sat down and said, let's outpromise. Let's outpromise Air Finale. So what can you come up with? And then they come up with a figure and it gets amplified. No fact checking, nothing in the article that says this organization calling itself APNU and AFC, they're prone to make promises that they have never implemented. And so they can't be taken seriously. But they're kept alive by these reports. So, the young coming back to what we're building here. Apart from everything else that's happening in the country, we're building the party of the future. A party that is diverse in its composition, ethnically, religiously diverse, gender diversity in our party and leadership. A party for the future, a party that focuses on serious planning and has a long-term vision. A party that has values, which is bringing people together to fight for freedom. That means not rigging elections, but fight for people to have fair choices. That's what we're working on in the PPP. And last weekend, we're moving closer to that goal because we believe 3,500 young people from that region alone got a little bit of an understanding, more directly from us, not through their rumors, etc., about what we stand for in very practical terms. The next thing I want to deal with, I'm going to deal with a cash grant before I come back and deal with the president's speech to the parliament last week, because there have been some attempts to misrepresent that speech. And we need to, I don't think most people actually have read the articles, and sometimes I just give wing to some of these stupid things by mentioning them. But I do think that we need, as a party, to tackle some of these issues. So, for those of you who are not familiar with the PPP's manifesto, which we presented to the nation in 2020, saying, should we win the elections, we will do the following things. And I just printed out the part to deal with oil and gas. And if you have an opportunity to read that section, and you will see that we've remained faithful to all of the things that we've promised in this document. So I'm not going to go through the long list of measures here, because you can do that for yourself, and you will see that through the reforms we have made, that we have complied with all of these measures. This is the list of measures that we said. And remember, we did this from opposition, and we were very, very specific. We didn't say, if we get into office, we'll do a study. If, as the others are saying, we'll do a study. They signed the PSA, 2016 PSA, APNU, AFC signed the PSA, and they're saying, you know, we're thinking about reviewing the PSA. So if we get into office again, we will hire some people to review the PSA. They can't do it now. They sign it. We'll review it in the future. We didn't sign the PSA, but in opposition, we listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 things that we will do in very specific terms in our manifesto. And we have done them. We've done them. To improve the framework for proper management of the resources, accountability and transparency, and getting benefits to our people. We've done it. So this just tells you about the nature of the political parties. Now, we did this in opposition. We didn't have state power, but we could have come up with specifics. But in the part where we talk about the use of oil money, we again define where the resources will go. And so what we said, support for job creation. How did we pursue this? Today, we're co-investing with investors as part of the budget to create jobs in many areas. We rebuilt the call center in Linden. We built 2 in the Essequibo, in Berbice, in Essequibo, in different parts of the country. We're investing in the shell, and we're getting people to operate these call centers to create jobs in these areas. That is, we said, support for job creation. Because on the APNU, tens of thousands of people had lost jobs. In Blackbush Polder, we built the factory shell. There, we got a company to start buying the goods from the farmers, the produce, and processing. That's one method. 2, we invested in the road, a road to the intermediate savannas. We built out the road, and we did some investments in some of the I think it was for a silo there. We set aside money. As a result of this, we have tens of thousands of acres now starting to go under cultivation for corn and soya, more job creation there. We took from the oil money of some of the resources, and we did 15,000 part-time jobs, so that those 15,000 Guyanese now are getting $40,000 per month for 10 days work. That's how. I can go down a long list, but that's the first point in our manifesto, how to use oil money, support for job creation. The building program for the 30-something thousand house lots we have done have generated more income and jobs for people, because more people are working infrastructure-wise, etc. But I don't want to belabor the point, because I can spend half a day only on job creation on what we have done. The second point is world-class education and healthcare for Guyanese. We started 12 new hospitals. Mount Sinai here working with us on management. We're training more people for the hospitals. We're going to rehabilitate all the other hospitals around the country. You see that investment, consistent with our promise. In 2020, this was made. World-class education, you've heard what we have done. Scholarships, university, free university, etc. I don't want to go through that again. We've kept that promise. That was the second promise that we said we want to use oil resources for. The third, social and economic infrastructure. Some of the social infrastructure, to a stadium at Palmyra, a stadium in New Amsterdam, track, 2 in Linden, and a Regina, we're doing one. We're at Albion, right across the country. Grounds, 34 grounds in Georgetown, 125 in Berbice, everywhere, all around. Social infrastructure, investment. We kept that promise. Economic infrastructure, power plant, roads, ports, bridges, that's economic infrastructure. I don't need to tell you what we've done. Gas to energy, we have started in the highways, community roads, a whole range of stuff. So we kept the third promise, social and economic infrastructure. The fourth one is targeted cash transfer to Guyanese, particularly the elderly, children, and poor and other vulnerable groups. So we said cash transfer to Guyanese. It's here in the manifesto of the PPP. I'll come back to that one in a moment. So that's the fourth one. The fifth one says strong local content for Guyanese with legislative safeguard. APNU had refused to pass the local content law. We passed it. 1,000 Guyanese business now earning about getting income about 700 million US or $150 billion a year. That's it. We did it too. So we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Saving for future generations. We've already started saving part of the resources through the Natural Resources Fund. And the next one is tax reduction for Guyanese businesses and individuals. We've removed the VAT. Since we got into office, we removed VAT that they had put in place. We removed the corporate tax for education. We removed the corporate tax for health care. We've reduced overall taxation for many entities. The president promised to expand tax holidays. We gave greater tax incentives now. As a result, we had 9 new international hotels built. Every one we've kept. Every commitment in the manifesto that we've outlined as to how to use oil and gas resources. Every one of them consistent with a vision. So I didn't see any other party do this. I didn't see them promise in their manifesto any of these things. No other political party was so pointed and kept their promises in everything we listed here. And the policy measures too. The nearly 20 policy measures, forget that. We implemented them. So when people go to claim, I see some people claim cash transfer. You know, the APNU, any idea now, as we said, the GT is their idea, the Linden Road was their idea, the paving Linden-Soesdijk idea, to build a bridge in Wismar was their idea. Everything is their idea. But as I pointed out, it's a stupid thing to say that it's your idea to give cash transfer or to use gas to generate power. Any dunce would know that if you have your own gas, you will use it to generate power, and you get cheaper power. And then you can also get cooking gas and all of that, rather than import expensive fuel to do it. What brain power do you need to do that? What brain power? And I saw AFC went to complain and we didn't do any feasibility study. They went to Washington and the people laugh at them. It's a comedy show. Exim Bank did their own due diligence on the same thing they said we didn't do. The technical feasibility and financial feasibility and the environmental studies. They did it separately. And they found it's okay, and soon our document will go to the board of the Exim Bank. So you to go to complain to the US government when they did their independent, their own consultants came and did this study and found that all of these things are okay on the project. So that's the clown show that AFC had in Washington. People laugh at them for this sort of thing. So everything is their idea. So they said, oh, now cash transfer is their idea. Since when that is a unique thing? It's in our manifesto from 2020, you see it here, to Guyanese, and particularly some groups. We started off with the particular groups by our children, giving them more money first. We started off with the elderly, those with disabled. And now we're having cash transfer to a larger group of Guyanese. So It's not Clive Thomas. Clive Thomas has been a failure in everything he's done. Clive Thomas come up with $1 million. Anybody could call a figure without even looking at the economics of it. I can say tomorrow, 10 billion you got to give to every Guyanese. And it sounds good. Clive Thomas ran two things that I'm telling you, apart from writing papers at the university. Globe Trust, and that institution failed, went into bankruptcy. He was heading that, the board. And Gaisuko, they put him to head Gaisuko under APNU, and 7,000 people got sent home. Those are the two things that I'll judge you on, whether you can do things, not to write pieces of paper and make wild promises. Can you actually manage things? And so he had said something in the past. So I hope that Jason sent me this stuff. I don't think he is sent. Oh, this is it, I think.
Jordan did say that widespread cash transfers are unlikely to find favor.
If it is a case where you're saying everybody in the population must get a transfer of cash and so on, I can tell you that will never fly.
You hear? He just said if it is that everybody in the population would get a cash transfer, that will never fly. Jordan, the Minister of Finance under APNU, talking about this. And today, they're claiming credit for it. This is the Minister of Finance on record saying, if you're talking about money for every person in Guyana, that will never fly, never fly. So, that's their position. Today, they're claiming credit for it. So let me tell you now, let me come back to the cash transfer. Having said all of this, so first of all, it's part of the PPP manifesto. Two, their track record is that in spite of all this gaffe now claiming that they want cash transfer and they want billions to go to people, the Minister of Finance said, if you're talking about cash to every person in Guyana, it will never fly. So we established what their position was. So, President Ali made the announcement, and on Thursday last, 200,000 for every household in Guyana. By Friday morning and Friday afternoon, I did an interview with some reporters. And if I said to them after the interview that we're reconsidering this, but do not say anything as yet. And I told them specific. That's Friday afternoon. And the person who interviewed me can confirm this, because I said, please don't say anything. This was Friday afternoon. Because from Thursday, when the announcement was made, to Friday morning, we were bombarded with calls. So already, people from families were calling us to say, we will, if you give the one person in the family, we will never benefit from anything. These are within families. A woman called me and said her husband works in the bush. Well, you know what I mean, in the interior. He came out at the census. His name is there as the head of the household. When he was here in the census, he gone back. He never gives her a cent. He heard about it Thursday. He said, you tell me when I'm coming to collect the money. He'd leave the interior, never give her a cent of money. He comes out and he goes back in there. And he wants to come out and collect the money. She said, if you give him this money, I never see a cent for me and my children. We'd never see a cent. He'd take it and go back in the interior. We have people who close to us. They said people are coming to us, they heard about it, tenancy agreements. By Friday afternoon, the tenancy agreements, everyone wanted to sign up a fake tenancy agreement. Because then you present your tenancy agreement. After we would have used, say, electricity bill, etc., the primary household, fake tenancy agreement. We would have ended up with 500, maybe 600,000 households, the secondary one. Then we saw people starting going to GPL. They want new meters and all kinds of things. So for their own room, all kinds. Before Friday, we realized that you couldn't count on the goodwill of people anymore. That they exercise, because we want every person, every family to benefit, real family. But we would have ended up with controversy and a never-ending issue to prove in a house how many persons were, how many households you had. And this was Friday morning, and by Friday afternoon when I did that interview. So we told Finance Friday to start re-looking at the issue. I saw Jordan on Sunday. No doubt somebody from Finance told him we're reconsidering it. So Sunday he said, oh, I suggest that you go to 100,000 now, as though it's an original idea. The same man who said it will never fly, you heard him, will never fly under the afternoon, never get it. I suspect somebody told him that. The government is reconsidering it to change it now. He claims credit for it. APNU is saying, it's our great idea. They are the idea now, you know. I don't give a damn about APNU and their idea. For us, it's as the president said, we want this to be fair. We want to ensure that it's done transparently. We want to have an easy way of verifying people, because now you have to prove who is the head of the household. Not just whether there is a household, but who is the head of the household. So that is the conflict now. So even when you have proven that there is a household, people say, he's not the head of the household. I am. I just supply more money than him. I just put in more money in the house. It was creating problems even in the family themselves. The way, and the president was gracious enough to accept and to agree to change the system. And now it may mean even a bit more money paid out, because we may have more than 600,000 individuals. We're aiming for about 300,000 households. So we're at $200,000 each. That would have been 60 billion. But we may have more than 600,000 people. So it may mean a bit more money, but it will be an infinitely fairer system. And it avoids us, the government, puts us in this unenviable position where we now have to prove who is the head of the household. And just imagine that will be never ending, and leave a lot of people dissatisfied. If every adult gets it now, we know who our adults are. We can prove who are adults, and we can prove that they're Guyanese. And those are the two criteria, Guyanese and adult. Those are simple things to prove because we have documents to prove that, and then we can pay people the money. So you can avoid duplication and all of that. Some people claim, it's fairer too, because if you have larger households, they'll get more. But I know maybe single parents, they may be affected a bit in an adverse way, but this was never intended as just for support for single parents. It was cash to help households. So it's a fairer system. And we listen to people, we look at the method we were using. First, we were going to use electricity bills and then look at the secondary households. but it will be a total nightmare. Total nightmare. It will end up in a lot of corruption and controversy if we try to determine households. Because even people who agreed that they were the head of the household in the census now change that. They're changing that. So I see them trying to take credit for this now. APNU is taking credit for something they said that will never happen under them. And Jordan is the worst one. He actually said, he was speaking as Minister of Finance for them, said it will never fly. Never fly. And made it look like it's alien to what we promised. It's here in our manifesto. We said it. It's consistent. But what you will find with us, it's not one or the other. We said all 6 areas will get attention. And we're focusing on long-term versus short-term benefits. And that's holistic. And we are tackling I'm going to deal with some of this. Oh, the Dutch disease. The Dutch disease is something different. It's a change in relative prices. It's when you have the exchange rate appreciating so that it kills the non-oil sectors. We don't have an appreciating exchange rate, and they said we're suffering from the Dutch disease. The manifestation of the Dutch disease is an appreciating exchange rate. The exchange rate is between 216 and 220 something. It's still where it was before. If it fallen to 190 now, then you start worrying that you're facing the Dutch disease because the relative prices have changed. And that's where you have an influx of foreign currency. Now, the economy, where we spoke about the possibility of overheating because of the massive growth. But then even the IMF acknowledged, although they warned about overheating generally, they acknowledge that our inflation rate from 2021 last year is half of what it was in 2021 in the COVID period. So an overheating economy is manifested in high inflation rates. Our inflation rate is lower than in the historic period from 2020 to now, and it is below even the regional average. That is how you manifest an overheating economy. And because we have done things to improve the supply response, like I mentioned to you how we have tackled things like the higher prices for aggregates. We have opened up 6 new quarries. We're moving from producing 500,000 tons a year to now 4 million tons a year. That has alleviated supply. And that is how you address things of limited capacity. The price inflation because of labor price escalation is a problem because people want more money to work now, labor, etc. So that is why we allow some of the contractors who are doing the big work to bring in their labor so that we can attenuate inflation prices, labor inflation. So I find it really, really desperate. I find it desperate that you have to claim everything the government does and say, we were thinking about that. We're thinking about that. And then come up with such a ridiculous thing. Your counter is, oh, we'll do 400,000 threshold without any regard to situating it as part of any policy. We hope that we're now rushing. I saw a distortion in Kaichor News that I said no payout before Christmas. So what we said is that we will try to complete this exercise in 5 months. That's what we said. We'll try to complete the exercise in 5 months. We will start as soon as possible, but the systems have to be in place to avoid corruption. Now with this 100,000 per person, it makes it easier because we already have the databases of, say, our pensioners, we have the database of our public servants, etc. Those are verifiable databases that would allow us to do that. When we go into the villages and maybe the wards in the cities, say South Georgetown, people now working for government, we'd have to put in place a proper mechanism that people can go to a place maybe and then take their ID cards and passport, verify that possibly, and then receive their money in the form of a check. And then we could even probably, they verify there, they get their names on the list, the checks are cut, then they collect the checks or it's posted to them. So that's it. We're hoping to do most of the transfer through checks, not cash. In the hinterland, as I pointed out, there may be a little more difficult time to get checks there because people who live in the remote parts of our country may not have a bank to encash the checks. And so we'd have to find another mechanism there to ensure that the right people get the money, and throughout the process it should be audited. And now it's clear. Soon you would have heard APNU said too, oh, they didn't give a PNC household. Well, now you don't have that. Every person, including Norton, he's eligible for his 100,000. I heard Jordan was worried about me collecting 200,000. The same Jordan who been transferring lands and all kinds of things, who is charged and before the court for corrupt activities. He was worried about Jagdeo collecting 200,000. He got his way now, right? It's 100,000. But waste of time, people. That's all I gotta say. And so you know who eligible now. Everyone is eligible. This morning I got another call. What about convicted prisoners? Would they be eligible? It never ends. Oh God. You see, when you start doing these things, like my phone has been just going non-stop, people coming to my gate at my home, etc. Every permutation of what could go wrong comes up. Every permutation. Could you split it? This man, I don't like him. He's in my house. All kinds of things happening now. All right. No. You get a chance to ask questions. So please don't interrupt my press conference, critic. All right. Yeah. So I will deal with that at the end. So I'm not finished as yet. So that was just before I came here. Now we have to think. We got to figure out, if you got to come on your own to collect this cash, how would a convicted person come out and collect his cash? Because you have to appear in person. You can't send your relative to collect this money. Now, so we didn't give it a thought as yet. We have to now think about whether convicted criminals are eligible. And that will be another debate in the newspapers. Guess what? Half of the people would be for it and another half against it. And then we get caught in the middle too. So all sorts of things that happen. So we want systems in place, proper systems. This will happen periodically in the future. It's not going to be a recurrent thing every year like they're saying. It's dependent on affordability, because we don't want to become like some other countries that distribute money only and then they collapse. Years later, nothing happens. Anyhow, I don't want to go down that route, because then I can show you how flawed their positions were. But then it doesn't matter. Everything is flawed about what they have proposed. So I might as well not go down that route. We're thinking about this. This is really, it's a sustainable thing for us. We can do this periodically, give our people some money, we can give them, and still do the infrastructure. Better housing, better roads, better hospitals for our people, balancing the interest. You don't have to do one at the expense of the other. Our people can benefit, and also we can do that. That's what we're about, balance, and in a sustainable way. You remember they said, don't build no road, and said, let's share out the money alone. But then they were against sharing out money at all in the past when they were in government, as you just heard from Jordan. So that's important. This brings me to this editorial. As I said before, these editorials that are written, you never know, because who writes them in the Starbuck News? It's just like the peeping toms of the Kaichor News. So I believe they're cowards, people like this. I said it before, they're cowards. They would never put their name to an editorial. So you can't get to expose how stupid they are, and even worse, how stupid they sung the ideas they put here. And how condescending too. So this one speaks about the president's speech in Parliament and the 200,000 grant. And they concluded, the last one, this is not the way to plan an economy. Now, some clown who wrote this editorial is telling us how to plan an economy. I don't know where they ever plan an economy. It must be from APNU. But very condescending, you know. This is not the way to plan an economy. So you tell us how to plan the economy. You're clueless. We've shown that in every period we've been in office that the economy has grown, and we're moving forward to the goal of, we move Guyana from this poorest country in the hemisphere, as reflected in the own Starbuck News article published by Starbuck News in the 90s, the poorest country in the hemisphere, to first of all a middle-income country before oil and gas, and now a higher middle-income country now with oil and gas. Throughout it all, changing it. And they're telling us this is not the way to plan an economy, but we don't know how. Then, what is the philosophy behind the grant? The philosophy is giving some back to our people. We got to outline a philosophy, one, and then, the grant can't be enough to tackle the horrendous cost of living burdened. Based on their 90 weeks article in the newspapers, 90 weeks they have been a cost of living series running. And not one of the 90 weeks they said what the government has done in the 5 areas that drive cost of living. Not one of the 90 weeks. You can run an article or articles 90 weeks in a row since we got into office about price increases, but never say that this government has done the following things. $80 billion of implicit tax subsidy on transportation. $70 million US to avoid electricity rates going up, keeping water prices constant, invest so that mortgage rates have dropped by 3 percentage points under this government. When the world mortgage rates are soaring in the United States, it's forcing people from the middle class to lose their homes. Never that in their 90, they're so proud about their 90 cost of living series. Never one. And what's the philosophy of this? Pure nonsense. Condescending again, very condescending. Oh, we know it best. We have a philosophy for giving grants. We know it best. Respect for intergenerational equity. This is the same people who will tell you about Norway. Now we are saving for intergenerational equity. Every time we build a road or a power plant, when we get 9 new hotels, that's wealth for intergenerational equity, because 4,000 Guyanese will work in those and get income. When we build 12 new hospitals, we're investing in intergenerational equity, because the next generation of Guyanese will get better health care. They don't see that. It's it's a clownish kind of analysis again, that, oh, you got to save in the sovereign wealth fund for intergenerational equity, just leave money. So we are leaving money there. And the same country, these are the same people who will quote the IDB and say somebody from the IDB or Norway said you have to do this. They have great respect for these people from abroad. Norway started saving, didn't save a cent of their oil money for the first 25 years of oil production. And they'd use Norway as the model. Norway didn't know about intergenerational equity too. So they have a beef here again with free education and free tolls, that this is a dicey thing. Again, everything, gas to energy is bad. Listen to the condescension again. That is unscientific, the gas to energy project, right? So Ali promised 50% reduction in the price of the gas. We said this a long time. So it may not come in by that time, but the government may still give you the 50%. And this is their conclusion. That is unaccountable, unscientific, and duplicitous governance. Because we want to cut electricity prices by 50% to people and bring stable power in. And may do it, maybe the project could be delayed 3 months, but that's unaccountable, unscientific, and duplicitous governance. Condescending. They would never attempt to even apply any standard to what APNU is doing. They have no governance, etc. So it is the board to the NRF is a sinecure. But it wasn't a sinecure when there was no board and the Minister of Finance alone controlled the NRF. It was okay then, but the board now is a sinecure. Joe Singh is a sinecure who heads the board. Lamy, who is now the foreign minister in the UK, was a member of the board. So those are the people. They're sinecures, but it's when Jordan was the Minister of Finance alone, he was running the whole NRF, wasn't a sinecure. I can go down the list. It's condescending. Condescending, we know best. We're anonymous and we know best, but we can write an editorial. It's all nonsense that passes off for analysis every single week. We have to deal with it. And you notice they come around the same projects. And even on the accountability, again, it is critics' contract. Again, that is in the audit report. It is the Auditor General spoke about the drugs being destroyed, misrepresented to say that the drugs apparently created the impression were procured in 2023 and 2024. Though for drugs procured in those 2 years, you read this statement from the ministry, less than 1% or 1.6% of it was became obsolete and they had to destroy. There are a lot of the drugs that they're talking about, the medical supplies and medication and supplies that they're destroying were pre-2019, and we had to destroy already 20 billion when we got into office. Many of those are pre-2019 and when you were procured for the COVID, but we came out of COVID, so we have to destroy them now. They're expired. A lot of those things. We responded to them too. The ministries have been responding. It's the same old thing. They didn't focus on the Auditor General positives, that no overpayment for the last 2 years was done. APNU, you had billions of dollars of overpayment. 600 million missing from the Durban Power project. No publication of the awards as is required by law on the NPTAB website. None of those things. And then the audacity of saying, we did not replace these pumps as yet. So they made it look like, the Auditor General put it in the report, that the government did not, these pumps were undersized. And then you saw what happened. The response from the ministry, these were pumps procured by APNU and procured and given to a person who was heading the company, and that was the same person who was Ramjatan's client when they were looking at their specialty hospital. He was with another company. Imagine Ramjatan's former client got the contract for these pumps. They supplied them, they supply pumps, not water pumps, pumps for like fire station. And then we now get the heat because they're not replaced as yet. We've been in discussion with the company. But they didn't deal with the crux of the matter, that who procured these pumps, that is Ramjatan, the PNC government and AFC, and it was given to Ramjatan's former client. Millions of US dollars. So even now we have to answer that. In the year 2024, we have to now go and account for what happened in 2019, 2018 under the PNC, their procurement. And it's in the audit report. And it made it look like, oh, it was the PP who procured these pumps. So these are, it never ends. They did not talk about, notice, nobody will speak about the 1,000 small businesses that were never there on the APNU. Of every race, you see the images, who in the course of the last 2 weeks in Region 6 and 4 got contracts worth about close to maybe 20, no, it would be more about $15 billion. Small contractors, nearly 1,000 of them that were never in existence under APNU because they didn't care too much about that. These were incubated under the PPP and people given an opportunity through a fair system because we work on rates. Now, we work on rates, they have a toehold now into their future. And it takes more time because it's easier to give one big man the contract and then monitor him. If you have to monitor 1,000 small people, it's infinitely harder than to get 4 persons the contract, 4 big contractors and get them done. But that defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do, to help small people of every race to grow in the contracting core. So we have a deeper contracting core in the future. That nobody mentions that. It passed on notice. Starbrook will never give a page to that. But they will take one contract and hold their write-up about it. But the 1,000 companies that were not there on the APNU, 1,000 actually, in only 2 regions. We're doing this tomorrow for Region 5. And then Region 10 has to be done too, because early in the year we did some Region 10, all of the regions. And we said we're trying to go with contractors from their own region. So people from their own region. So in Sophia, here in Georgetown, 1.4 billion was awarded in block and B-Field alone recently. And we sought to have contractors from Georgetown, etc., different parts of the country. Nobody talks about that. APNU would have never done it. In fact, when the contractors get this, young black contractors get this, they try to run them down. You remember how they tried to run down the Bamia school that the hits and jams people got. Well, the school is finished now. It's finished now. But if we had bothered with them, that group would have never gotten a contract. But then if they didn't get the contract too, they claim discrimination. When they got the contract, they run them down. Say, oh, they're linked to the PPP, as though people who are linked to PPP should not get anything. And not that they are linked to the PPP or they got the contract because they're linked to the PPP. But so what if people are PPP? They don't have a right to get contracts too. So we're not going to go on the defensive here because we have a proud attempt to expand that they would have never done. And not a word about that But you can put a whole page in the newspaper about the Auditor General report that we are now replacing the pumps, and when the pumps were bought under APNU, and you didn't even deal with it when the response comes in. That's not fair. Every day we have to deal with this through the unsubstantiated reporting or the outright lies every single day. And had it not been for social media, frankly speaking, more people would have read these newspaper articles, etc., and probably would not have would have believed otherwise. Like in the past, they did. In the pre-2015 period, more and more people were reading the newspapers at that time, so they actually believe a lot of the lies that were told. I don't want to go through the long list of improvements in the audit report. There's a long list of improvements, since they highlight the few things that you had problems with. There's a long list of improvement. But it will take a lot of my time if I had to go through all of these here today. These are, maybe I should just end here. So thank you.
Dr. Jagdeo, good day. Cordell Jones from Livewire News. There's been a lot of public consternation over large bank deposits being made by a senior police officer, with reports that another senior officer justified this in an affidavit. Is the government concerned about these developments?
So let me make it clear that there is no attempt to discriminate against anyone. I've seen recently a slew of social media people who are linked to the opposition, particularly the extreme ones, attempting to portray this issue as a race issue. But that's predictable. Let me make it clear what our policies are. We support the police force. We support the leadership of the police force. We support them to do their work, but they must comply with the laws of this country. The PPP will not tolerate corruption in the police force or anywhere else. And when we find corruption in the police force or anywhere else, there will be no attempt to cover it up. So if you believe that you have a special relationship with the government and that we will, pursuant to that relationship, cover up your misdeeds, you have it wrong. You don't know the PPP. When this matter surfaced, the opposition was saying that these individuals, or this particular individual, was linked to the government of Guyana. And they did not trust that there will be an impartial investigation. The AFC and the PNC called for external body to investigate because they believe that there will be a cover-up. We made it clear at that time that the investigations would be professional and there would be no interference from the executive to steer the investigation either way, and that the chips may fall where they may. I said those words. In the investigations, the impartial investigation, done by an arm of the police force, there is a recommendation that went to the DPP to lay multiple charges against the individual for breaches of the law. I see the particular individual now filing a constitutional motion claiming that somehow the executive, the same executive, that the PPP or the executive, is influencing the course of the the investigation. APNU was saying something different. They were saying, we will help this individual. We'll cover up what he was doing. He is now saying we are influencing it to lay charges against him. We have no interest whatsoever in that. But if you did illegal things, you will face the consequences. And from all that I've read, that a lot of wrong things took place. A lot of illegalities took place. And so we will respond to the constitutional motion in court. And since some charges were made, trust me, our affidavit to respond to those charges may not be beneficial to the particular individual, because we will go into great details about what our findings were in the procurement system. And so when he was heading the administration of the police force. So further, I don't want to say anything on the matter. And let me also make it clear here today that this government never sanctioned a policy where private individuals and businessmen could pay for the birthdays and weddings of policemen or other public officials. In fact, we think it's reprehensible. It's reprehensible. So that's all I'm going to say for today, for now, because these are legal matters and they're before the court.
Former AFC executive member and Minister of Business Dominic Gaskin has criticized the AFC, PNC, APNU for their refusal to accept the outcome of the March 2nd, 2020 elections. He also stated that this, among other factors, would lead to their defeat in 2025. Do you share this view?
Yes. So I think he is clear, and he has greater credibility because he was one of the few persons from that side in the 5 months who actually spoke about that the figures or the position that they took was untenable. And so he comes with a great deal of credibility because he doesn't say that only now. He said it in the 5 months period when they were trying to steal the elections. And until now, that is why I asked that you ask Nigel Hughes pointedly that if he believes the PPP rigged the elections, because they're telling people on the ground, the AFC, that that's an APNU position, that they lost the elections. But when they speak publicly, because they were defending the attempt to rig, they say something else. So people know how unethical. They lack integrity. The leadership of the AFC and PNC, they lack integrity. If you can't accept that your party sought to rig the elections and you defended the rigging, how would people trust you for anything else? And I think that is what Dominic Gaskin was getting at, that people see them as untrustworthy. And he was speaking about particularly the PPP's base. You know, how would you even go into a village or somewhere to campaign and say to the people there, your party was the one that tried to rig the elections in the last elections? So that's one. Their admission that they sought to rig the elections is not just important now for credibility's sake, but it could lend to their rehabilitation. It just shows they're unrepentant. They have had 28 years of stealing elections, and then another 5 that they sought to steal elections, and they're unrepentant about it. And they behave as though they did not try to steal elections. In fact, Hamilton Green said, we should steal the elections to stay in power. The fossil, and he is part of the mix still. They still roll him out from time to time to make some statements. So, and now, in the face of all of that, they're talking about list, what the credibility of the list. And so, he's absolutely right there. And I think most people know that they will lose the elections. I think they know they'll lose the elections. In fact, internally they say this, that they would lose the elections. So they know that. How you? Because it's not just rigging. You broke every one of your promises. What promise can you make now that will force me? You can make any promise, but what promise can you make that would lend me? What can you say to me to lead me to believe that you're serious about implementing it, having just come off a number of years when you just not only did not implement it, but you acted with impunity. The same people like the Trotmans and the Pato and the others, they were walking on the air. They were walking on the air. Their friends, their activists couldn't even talk to them. Like me, it didn't change from the leader of the opposition to now. I'm vice president now, or general secretary of the party. My activists have access. They can come still. We still meet with them. They talk to us. We don't leave our people out in the cold because you're in government and you get into office now. We're busier, but you find time for your people. They never did because they're elitists. Now, again, they're walking around. Nigel Hughes walking around. He came upon a pit toilet. I know he was shocked to see a pit toilet somewhere in the country. It's a pit latrine, rather. And how could this happen in this day and age? Where was he in the 5 years? Except collecting money from Exxon. Up to now, collecting money from Exxon, and then they were negotiating the 2016 agreement. And you notice, up to now, they just brushed off this whole question of lack of integrity from this conflict of interest. They just brushed it off. It's gone. The Kaichor News forget about that. The man is working for Exxon now and heading a political party that's in parliament. And he collecting money every day from Exxon. They cost the PPP. And poor Sam Hines, because he muses and shares his thoughts publicly, what he thinks. But it's not an official position of the party, and we know that. And Sam has earned the right to say what he wants. He has contributed enough to this country to allow him to have a free intellectual thought wherever he believes in, and honest. I trust that. But they're hung in Sam Hines. Sam Hines don't collect money from Exxon. Nigel Hughes, that gets reported is on Exxon's payroll. And they wouldn't focus on what he says. That is the duplicity. So Dominic Gaskin is right. I saw the newspaper article. I didn't see the program, but I saw the newspaper article. And, people, as I said, he can speak with integrity because he took that position even when they were in office. And it would have been a difficult thing to do, too, because his father-in-law was President Granger. So it would have been a difficult thing for him to do, too. But he took a principled stand. And that's why he can criticize the PVP with some credibility. And I wouldn't even bother, because but a Pato can't do it. A hustler Pato, sticky finger Pato can't criticize us. He has no integrity.
Dr. Jagdeo, Mikhail Rodriguez, Daybreak News. Your government has gone above and beyond. Its action is unprecedented as it relates to the development and even cash handouts, grants, and what you've been doing, all with the intention of bringing a better living standard to most Guyanese. Today is International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. Has your government seen the fact that with all that has been done, there's still a great number of Guyanese who have a mentality that is one of poverty? It seems that the cash handout and the housing and the direct injection to the people has not changed their mindset much. Does the government see an importance in changing a program of moral decorum, and even our public transportation system is one of a poor country? Does the government see the need to change certain things to really bring around and take our country to a real developed stage in terms of the people's mentality?
Yeah. So poverty and how have we fared? If you look from the Ramprakash study that was done for CMAP in the 1990s, you will see that at that time, 90%, 87% of the population was living below the poverty line. So today, we're a far cry from those days. But let's just look at 2020. You had 60,000 people who are not working, who are working today. If you're working and you're poor, imagine when you had no income whatsoever. So the lives of a lot of those people have changed. 60,000 of them more are working. That is major impact on poverty. Poverty is about, and then to get out of poverty. So the transfer of wealth, I don't want to go into it comprehensively because I can talk about it at length. So that's just one metric. More people are working, less people are poor. In the public sector, we have $90 billion more per year going into the pockets of the public servants from 2020 to now. 90 billion more per year. That's the increase. So they have greater disposable income. The 60,000 people who are working now have employment and they have their own income. Maybe another, maybe about 100 to 150 billion a year they earn. So those are two groups of people. On housing, so those are to deal with disposable income. But what about asset base of people to get out of poverty? So the key things to get out of poverty would be a better education. We're now equipping people. 50,000 are studying or just completed study, paid for by the government to get a better skill, to get a better paying job, a degree or something. So we are giving people better education to come out of poverty. Secondly, on housing, 33,000 house lots since we got into office. You know it costs us $5 million to do a house lot, put in all the services. Many of those people are getting the house lot for $200,000, $800,000, $1 million. Transfer, that's a subsidy immediately for a plot of land that costs $5 million to develop and possibly maybe another $3 million if you were to sell it. That's 33,000 people who have some wealth now. They start getting, people start owning more cars, their own cars, they're owning a plot of land, they're getting a core home, they're getting a better education. That's how in the long run you tackle poverty. In the United States of America, they have 30 million people living in poverty. They have millions who live on the street More than our entire population, people who don't have a house, they live on the street. I just looking at a figure recently in the debates. Nearly 400,000 children are trafficked into sex slavery in the U.S. Children. 400,000, that's half of our population. And this is the wealthiest country in the world, the biggest economy in the world. So we're tackling on a daily basis. Just imagine the people who you go to, don't go on too long, because I can go down the list of people I met since we got back into office, who APNU supporters who had nothing. They were complaining about things were slow everywhere, from taxi drivers used to come to my office, the people, no contracts, nothing. The whole system was drying up. People are losing jobs. Last night we met with young professionals, and some who were working in the Forestry Commission, a few of them were there, and they said 2015 was a bad year. We're doing well, and then in 2015, I was shocked that they were saying to this. First time I heard this. So the government, we got rid of Bai Shanlin that was buying the lumber from all the people in Kwakwani and Aichuni. We had given those people, about 600 of them, a community forest lease. I asked them to get together. We gave them a lease. They were running it together, and then they were selling their lumber to the other market there. Got rid of it. Everything died. They split up all the big concessions, gave it to a few people. One man who was an an APNU member, APNU AFC member, who is a member of parliament now on the board of the GFC, he got 2 of those leases for himself. So what happened? All the revenue fell down. So last night the guy was saying, the professional, we didn't get paid every month. As soon as the BP left off, 2015 it started. We were paid in alphabetical order. So I said, what do you mean by this? He said that some months they start from the top, and then the next month they started from the bottom. I was shocked. I didn't even know that. These were professional. You had about 4 of them from GFC. That is what happened. He said 2015 was a nightmare year for us, and it started to decline. In the forestry sector, we lost 50% output. Remember when they put VAT on machinery and equipment and everything else? Lost thousands of jobs there, not just in sugar. We tend to focus on sugar a lot, but in the mining sector. So imagine those people living in poverty. Think about in Kwakwani, and when Roussel walked away, that APNU caused the Roussel and the others to walk away. 1,000 families before the last election lost jobs there. They were working, they lost their jobs. What do you think? They'd grow wealthy, or they'd go into the ranks of the poor? So they have nothing to talk about poverty. They can't tell us anything about poverty, about fighting it. And so it is something we've consistently worked on. The mere fact that we're building out more opportunities in the economy, more jobs, broadening the base of the economy to agriculture and to the hospitality sector, etc. When people have more jobs, higher paying jobs, better opportunities, through their own efforts, they get out of poverty, especially if they have a supportive government.
Dr. Jagdeo, you have on many occasions spoken about as asked by myself and others, about the unfair balance of the distribution in media and Kaicho News. And Kaicho News has now come out as, Glenn Lyle has come out vying to be presidential candidate, starting a political party. While that is happening, I have been monitoring, and Kaicho News's ads from government have in recent times gone up. While government or yourself is portraying a certain way, the actions, the words are coming out one way, but the actions of your government is different. Can you speak to that?
So I've not gotten the time to write the president as yet, but I said as General Secretary, of the party, I have to write the president, they must get now the same amount of ads that the mayor gets from the government and New Nation from the PNC. Equity. So that's what we want. If you have a political, the head of your newspaper is a political candidate who has declared his candidacy, then he has to get the same amount of ads, or else it's unfair. The government is funding the lies and the political party, which is Kaichor News. So I gotta get the same thing, or they gotta increase the mayor's ad. I want like all the ads you see in Kaichor News, I gotta get it too, for the mayor.
Timeline on this, or it's open-ended?
I'm going to talk to them seriously. It's either they cut and give to. I would urge Mr. Norton to also apply for the same amount of ads, because he's eligible just as we are as political parties. We get the same amount, equity. I would say they have a right to do this too. So we can't be funding the lies too every day, the lies that they tell, and it's for political. When it was just a newspaper, it's fine. But when it's a political party newspaper, it's a different matter. You're funding the lie for political purpose. Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo, and Asa Williams, Kaichor News. Recently, we would have seen the head of Exxon, Pagano, coming out to say that we should not, well, he was basically urging Guyanese to not compare our contract to Suriname's, saying that we should not cherry pick the numbers. He also would have said that you can either have a larger portion of a smaller number or a fair share of a larger number. Can you say how does the government plan to basically ensure that future oil projects will better represent the interests of the Guyanese people?
Yeah, this is, so I spoke of, earlier this week I also met with Minister Ramdin from Suriname, the foreign minister, and he brought a number of people from Statsoli and from the government who deal with this sector. So we talked extensively about the coordination of our efforts, collaboration in this sector, and we committed to share more information on the oil and gas industry among ourselves. So the gentleman who was quoted, he was there at the meeting, and he said to me that there are many things I spoke of that this was just plucked out, and it's not in the context of what I meant. So the gentleman was at the meeting, and I said, don't worry about it. I'm accustomed to the distortions. So from Suriname, who was quoted as saying they had a better contract than ours. There was some gentleman who was quoted. And he was there and he said to me, no, he apologized. And I said, no, I'm accustomed to the distortion. Do not worry about it. We have had to live this. We live this on a daily basis, the distortion. So we have made it clear that future, you asked me about future contracts, and that is precisely why we have the new PSA. And people argue now that our new PSA is too onerous, that it's too tough, that we want too much. So we can commit to that future agreements will never be as lopsided as the 2016 agreement. So in answer to your question, I can commit to that. In fact, we are working towards that.
Good afternoon, Renee Sambich with Kaichor News.
Good afternoon.
Apart from local content, what do you consider as a successful measure that your government has implemented in relation to the oil and gas sector?
So a successful measure to get more benefits, right, to the country, because there are lots of other successful measures. I can list a long series of them, like the new laws, the regulatory environment, a whole range of stuff. And so one that I mentioned to you, that outside of the fiscal benefits we get, that is the royalty rate, right, and the share of oil, which comprise our revenue, that to bring greater benefits, not necessarily to the government, but to the people of Guyana from the presence of the oil and gas companies in Guyana. So how do we enhance that benefit? And there are two things that we said we will do in opposition, and that that the first week that we got into office, we started working on. One was the local content law, which you mentioned, that has seen significant benefits coming to our people. And second was the GTE project, the gas to energy project, that when completed, only from this phase will save Guyanese $250 million per year. 250. So if you take the savings alone, it will mean over 10 years we would have paid back from the savings alone the project. Okay, so that's the next big initiative. So the oil and gas, the local content has brought $700 million more of business to our companies, US dollars, and we will save $250 million from the GTE project per year. So you're talking only in those two, when they're operational fully. If we use the same figures, it will grow over time. For example, the procurement benefits will go. But already $1 billion we're talking about potentially of benefits to people outside per year, outside of the money that comes to the government in royalty and profit share.
Is there anything else the government is considering?
We are looking now, the new law, you know, the decommissioning money. Under the new law, we said we have a part, the money has to be kept in a separate account, and we have to be part of that. Under the PSA, it was kept by the oil and gas companies, the 2016 agreement. This is the first license. The sixth license was the first one where we said, from here now onward, the deductions for decommissioning would have to be in a separate account. We're hoping if they're open to that. I saw the president saying that they may be open to bringing all of the money from the other 5 FPSOs to the decommissioning account. So that would be ideal for us, and it's something that we may want to have discussions on, because I hope he doesn't change what he meant there, what he said there. So I've been looking at that. That's one area that it wouldn't bring immediate benefits to us, but at least we know that we have a say over the money, that it's there for decommissioning. We hope that these companies would also, like the Hess company. The Hess company made a big investment in our forestry sector by buying $750 million worth of carbon. Exxon and Sinopec, they've been atrocious in their support for environmental initiatives locally. So we are hoping that they will step up in that regard too.
Dr. Jagdeo, just a follow-up on issues of national interest. Recently, one government official and 2 private businessmen have been sanctioned by the Americans. Thereafter, the government official was sent on leave immediately after, and you had said that all government agencies are visiting the relationship with the Mohammeds, and also the government of Guyana requested the information that caused the Americans to bring sanctions against these individuals. Have you received the information, and does the government of Guyana still have business relations with the Mohammeds?
So the original position stands. I've not personally followed up on the issue for the last maybe couple of months, but as of now, I'm aware that we have not received the information requested of the US government. at this point in time. There is an active investigation by SOCU. And therefore, I do not wish to comment on it. I will never call SOCU to ask them what the state of the investigation. We don't work like Ramjatan and the others to call technical people every day. But there is an investigation, from what I've told, by SOCU of the matter.
As it relates to the government agencies,
Yes, and that what the president said at his press conference still stands. So I don't know how all the agencies should have complied with the instructions given by the president. The president made it explicit about what the relationship would be at the press conference. And therefore, we expect that the agencies would comply with the president's instruction.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. Shukwan Gill, DPI. In relation to Clifton Hickens' appointment as Commissioner of Police, has that happened as yet?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't follow up these issues on a daily basis because it's not part of my remit in government, but I'm not aware of it. But the Attorney General has dealt with this matter in the public domain because there were questions about the legality of the appointment, and he dealt with it extensively, the Attorney General. I'm aware of it because I mentioned right here that I spoke to him when I saw it in the newspapers, and he assured us that all the legal steps were taken and that the appointment would be one that can withstand not just public scrutiny, but also any legal investigation or interrogation.
Sir, Navendra Siraj, Guyana Chronicle. Just for clarity on the removal of tuition fees for UG and perhaps the government institutions as well. There have been questions whether persons who owe UG but might not necessarily have a payment plan with the bank or the university.
Yes,
once
they owe the University of Guyana, then they're eligible for the write-off too. They don't have to have a loan at the bank or to the student agency. If you owe them and you don't have a loan there, but then you're eligible for the write-off.
To the Dominic Gaskin comment. I know it was mentioned that it is important for the opposition to commit that they would respect the will of the people. But do you believe society would accept any commitment from familiar faces?
Yes,
Into
and that's why they're in deep, I don't want to say the word, but you know what I mean. Because people don't believe them. And every time, so Nigel Hughes comes along and tries to present himself as the bastion of integrity, which we know he is not. We just dealt with that lack of integrity in saying that he will support Exxon's interests above that of Guyana. That's one. Then they try to sound like very smart on policy. And we have poked outside of the pit latrine policy. They have nothing else outside of that. It's just a bunch of nonsense. Every time they come up with something, even a child could poke hole in it. So they don't have any vision, they don't have policy, they don't have integrity, they lack integrity. And he's very thin-skinned too. You remember last week I spoke about this swag thing. Right? So they put march and swag. And I said there's an informal definition of swag. And you can Google it online. It means goods from thieves and robbers, right? So that for them to say march and swag, selling stolen goods. So I was joking about it. He wrote a long piece about Jagdeo needs to get with it, and you know that it's cool, it's a cool term and stuff. thin-skinned, silly thing. He didn't deal with the informal thing anymore. But apart from that, so that was a digression. So they have that, nothing to offer. And then there's this big believability gap. They have a huge believability gap, anything they say, because they've said so much and they have not meant it or done it, that people, you got to be like impaired in some way to actually believe anything they say. You have to be a special breed or impaired to believe anything that a Nigel Lewis or a Patterson would say, or maybe Norton too. So that is something that they're fighting against. Who would believe anything they say? You think a pensioner can believe after they promise within 100 days to double old age pension and they took away their water? You think anybody would believe you get cash transfer when they couldn't give the 10,000 to our children? You're talking about $1 billion trash transfer per day, and stuff like that now. Well, you couldn't keep the 10,000 for our kids. So that's the believability gap.
Right. On the migrant issue in Linden, I've seen in some sections of the news comments that could be described as xenophobic, whereby
it's
they're
not just xenophobic, it's the jaundiced people like Deron Adams and Sharma Solomon, jaundiced. They can't discuss policy, nothing for the benefit of people. They defend their perks by hanging on to the leadership of these organizations, the town council and the region. These people, when the Prime Minister invited them to look at issues of flooding in the area and working, they didn't show up. But they spread racism. They spread fear all the time. First, it was the PBP is racist. So they pushed the racism line aggressively. Now it's fear of the migrants. They are coming here, kidnapping our children. They're taking our jobs. They're doing all sorts of things. The fear of the migrant is the next one now. So that is how they work. It's so transparent. These are sick individuals. They can't think of anything positive. That's how they survive in those environments, walking around. Oh, it's the migrants now taking and the PPP is allowing these migrants to take away your job. So PPP gets blamed. Oh, the PPP bring in the Chinese and the Venezuelans to take away your jobs. That's the new thing now. So, the usual stuff we have to face. I saw now they went and tested the road. They did the probe. I don't know where they plugged the probe, but they just probe and they found harmful metals on the road that was used to be, the government built the road, and then we did a test, it's not so. That's it. But to stop the road from being built. Now, they found now suddenly the material used on the road, it's toxic. I don't know how much toxic material you have in the whole region there, but if it's so toxic, it might be a bigger problem. And how they didn't discover this toxic stuff all these years? It's not every day it's some new invention from these people. And they prey on people who are jaundiced and stupid. I shouldn't say that. But yeah, there are some real stupid people. And I shouldn't say that. It's a bad word, but yeah, there are stupid people too. Yeah.
Dr. Jagdeo, if I can follow up on the UG question. Students have expressed gratitude, first of all, for the government's move to make education free.
And by the way, hopefully you will, because we had concerns from others. So the GSA and stuff, please carry that to all the entities, Carnegie School, GSA, the technical institutes, all of them, the fees would be removed from everyone to all of those places.
Students have expressed that gratitude, but there is a concern from students in relation to the quality of education being maintained and even upgraded at the University of Ghana. What will government be doing to ensure that that quality is maintained and even upgraded, since this is going to be fully funded from government?
For me, it's upgrade. It's not maintained, because I have my concerns about what is there now. But it means also, so there will be a commitment at a minimum, to supply resources beginning January 1 that is no less than what they have now. So it's not like we're taking over and cutting the budget. The budget, we'd have to look at money coming in from private sources in the past, what was from the public source, the subvention, and we had a 3 billion subvention already to UG per year. So if it's 8 billion they spend and 5 billion was coming from, just to use some numbers, private sources, at a minimum they will get the additional 5 billion. So that there'll be no cutting of the budget for any of these agencies. So and over time it will grow also. But we also need a management seized with sense of urgency. And you have to have structures there, like the council at UG has to push for better quality education and better use of the money. We're not going to tolerate, because some people already think, oh, it's government, let's suddenly push up costs everywhere, without looking at efficiency or better quality tuition for the students. They're just more money, government money, let's spend more. That's not going to happen. It has to be, we have to get output for it, more efficiency and better quality tuition for the children who go to UG and other places. Not just children, you have elderly who go there too. Well, people who go to these places. So that's something, but it means more intervention. I'm hoping the Ministry of Education now would play a greater role on quality, bringing in people from abroad. Professor Opede was there. I have great respect for him, who is running the gold program, the Nigerian National. They have to move them out at the University of Ghana. We need people like that who have been in education all their lives, several of them, to be part of the renaissance of education and the growth of a quality university, because they face a lot of competition through online universities. People nowadays are not bound by the past. I sung it almost like Kamala Harris, that bound by the past. The thing, right? They're not bound by the past, so they have so many options, and you have great quality degrees that they can pursue online now without even leaving their home. So if we're not competitive at UG, people are going to opt for other opportunities, and we are going to provide those opportunities to them too, because our end goal is educating all our people, not just supporting UG to funnel everybody into UG, but access to education for all of our people and high quality access. So we support UG, grow UG, because it's our national university, but we're going to also give people choices, especially people who live outside of, say, Region 4. If you live in Region 1, 7, 8, 9, or in Linden or somewhere else, or in Crabwood Creek, you don't necessarily want to come down to a physical campus. You may want to pursue a degree, and you have to have an opportunity too. So this is something we wanted to succeed. This is part of our manifesto, high quality. It says world-class education for our people, world-class health care. That's where we want. Eugene, anything else? Okay, thank you very much.